Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we're going to talk about week 3 of Planetary qualifiers. So first of all, a little overview of the tournaments that we had. Loads of tournaments on the 18th, a lot fewer on the 19th, and let's take a look at our results starting by PQ Melbourne. We got 96 players, and we got a surprise win with Saxon Yellow, a deck that we've seen performing in the US, I think with Gandork during the set 2. So let's see how the list evolves here with the new set. So let's take a look at. So we're looking at the Crafty Smugglers, the Gar Saxon. So yeah, it's the same list. As you can see, it's an aggro, relatively aggressive list here. Peerless position has been added to the deck. So did the Cad Bane. I don't exactly remember exactly what the version that Gandalf was playing in last season was, but this is definitely very close to it, I would say, in terms of the global gist of what the deck is trying to do. And overall, the deck has not really changed from the very first time people kind of figure out the deck was a thing. It was a deck that was spotted very early on in set 2, and it's a deck that hasn't really been performing consistently, but has put up some surprise performances. That's literally the second time it happens, so a little bit hard to make any analysis on whether this deck is gonna break through into the meta, or is just gonna remain a very, very small and niche phenomenon. But it is a relatively big PQ, so congratulations to this player. Unfortunately, I don't have all the names, I'm sorry. Second position, we got a Han Yellow. So let's take a look at the list. Han Yellow, of course, still remains the top of the meta. And as you can see, the list is pretty classic. We have a couple of a wide variety of different cards in the main deck here. Gamma 1 guards in the main deck, which is not always the case. And then we got a couple of Plo Koon as well. I thought that Plo Koon is already sometimes a little bit hard to trigger the coordinates whenever you're playing Han Yellow. That's why Plo Koon is not an auto-include in the deck. But it is very strong in the mirror match, as it can ambush and kill opponent Han Solo, whether it's the leader or the units. So having extra card that can potentially deal with Han Solo is fairly valuable. Even though it's not going to be good all the time. That's why you only see 2 copies of it. Here we also saw Jetpack being played over DR44 Blasters. I see people playing Jetpack as a complement to DR44 Blasters, but in this case here, he's basically playing it instead, which is a bit weird in my opinion, because really, in the vast majority of the case, I found DR44 Blaster to be a far better card. Also, only 2 copies of Surprise Strike is a big surprise, because this card is, in my opinion, incredibly powerful in this deck. Also, a couple of surprising cards in the sideboards here to a new adventure, which I'm not a big fan of, generally speaking. And then a Grogu. I wonder in one matchup he wants this card. Maybe it's good in a mirror match, as it allows you to tap down the enemy Han Solo. So maybe it's good in a mirror match. Moving on here to the third position with a Rey Tarkintown. We'll take a look at the... can we take a look at the list, please? Thank you. If you guys want to know more, there's a write-up here from the creator of the deck. And as you can see, the list here is pretty classic here. It's pretty much what you would expect. We'll see once again the soldiers of the 501st seeing some play here, as it is a card that comes into play, can be boosted by Rey. So it becomes basically a 2/4 raid 1, so almost a 3/4 for 2. In early on in the game on turn 1, which I found to be quite powerful. It is something that I wish more Rey players were doing. This Soldiers of the 501st really seems to be really strong in Rey. But he has a variety of different 1-drops that he can play here on turn 1. And Rey seems to be really the blue-white leader that seems to be seeing the most success in this new set. Which is not a surprise. I mean, we also, of course, see Anakin being played. I feel like early on, a lot of people were playing Anakin because it was kind of the new thing. So people will always be naturally attracted by playing the novelty. They're attracted by the new leader. and try to play this in priority. But to be fair, now we're seeing Rey kind of like slowly but surely kind of performing a little bit better. The access to Tarkintown, the leader's ability is just provides some really strong values and some really strong synergies. And the heal 3 is really powerful. But honestly, the leaders are close enough, the two decks are close enough to each other that you could play either one and have some really good results. They're very similar to one another. So the rest of the top 8, it's very diverse. We got some Cad Bane, Jango Green, which is something that I've been messing around playing. I've not really been a big fan of this archetype personally. I found this the Jango Red to be so much better. Even though they're quite different deck, a Jango Green is really closer to the old Boba, while the Jango Red is really the aggressive deck. And then another Han Yellow, Palpatine Yellow, and then another, and a Kylo Red, which is something we're gonna see quite a bit in this top 8. We see quite a few people managing to make some performances with Kylo Red, which is by far the most aggressive deck in the game. Unfortunately, we have no deck list for that. Moving on to PQ Cordoba, with once again 98 players, very respectable amount of players here. And on number 1 we have Han Green. So his Han Green is very much what you would expect. It is very close to the kind of Han Green that I've been messing around at the beginning of set 1. At the beginning of set 2, sorry. So the list has almost did not really change much with the new expansion. I mean, this one has a couple of Plo Koon, the Enfys Nest, and a couple of R2, but okay, well, the list is pretty much what you know. It's so if I had to give my analysis on what I think about Han Green compared to Han Yellow, is that I think Han Green is one of the strongest deck in the game if you can get a resupply on turn 2. Because resupply on turn 2 means Han Solo deploy on turn 3, which means potentially a 7 drop on turn 3, which is very powerful. And even if you don't manage to, the Han Solo gets countered for some reason, you still have the option to play a 6 drop like a Falcon, and Falcon on turn 3 is still pretty powerful. Talking about the Falcon. Interestingly, so yeah, so it's pretty much the one is very powerful about Han Green. If you are not drawing resupply, then the deck is very much just a worse version of Han Yellow, in my opinion. The fact that you cannot play the DJ, you cannot smuggle the DJ using 7 resources is a big deal, because DJ for 7 is actually something you do very often in Han Yellow. It's actually the most common way to play DJ nowadays. Very rarely are you gonna, against a good player, very rarely are you actually gonna pull off a tech and a DJ. There's just so many timing window for the opponent to answer that. So it's really rarely happening unless you're playing in a specific matchup that doesn't have the answer to that specific thing, or you get lucky enough that your opponent doesn't draw into it. But most of the time, you're actually gonna be playing DJ for 7, which this deck obviously cannot do. Obviously, you don't have access to many of the very powerful double yellow cards, like Cunning or Cantina Bouncer. You do have some replacement. Your U-Wing Reinforcement is very good, but unfortunately, I don't think it makes up for everything you're losing for yellow white. Not only that, one of the reasons that made definitely in set 1, Han Green was the best deck in my opinion, and then I think the momentum shifted in favor of Han Yellow simply because yellow white and double yellow in general just got a lot of great new cards that really made the deck a lot stronger, while Han Green, green white did not really get anything good. As you can see here, there's not a single green white cards in this set from the new set, and even from set 2 there's very little, just the Sundari Peacekeeper, which is really not that big of a deal. So for all those reasons, I think Han Yellow is considerably worse than Han Yellow. Once again, Han Green, if you can get a resupply, it's a very powerful deck, but if you don't, you're just gonna be a worse version of Han Yellow. Personally, I don't like playing decks that are so dependent on drawing a specific cards to operate properly, and that's the reason why I personally decided to stop playing this deck, even though I still love the deck. Obviously, it is my baby, as you know. It's a deck that I invented, that I think was that I played a whole lot in set 1, but I simply don't think this deck is the best way to play the leader in this new set. And that's why I haven't updated my deck list about it. And I know a lot of people have been asking me to make a new video about Han Green. And my opinion is simply that I sincerely believe that Han Yellow is better, and that's why I haven't bothered to make a deck list about it. But yeah, congratulations by this player for winning this PQ with this deck. Then we're seeing another archetype which is starting to see a lot of play, and that's obviously the Han Red. We're seeing basically a kind of a similar pattern as Boba, where all flavor of Han are kind of seeing some success in tournaments, because Han is simply a very, very strong leader that can almost work with almost anything. And as you can see, this version is usually Han Red decks are a lot more aggressive. That's not really the case with this deck. As you can see, he's playing a very high curve here with the Poldamron, the Falcons, the Mace Windus, the Enfisness, the Han Solo, and even 2 copies of Sabine Red, which I wonder why he's playing this. That it doesn't seem to be particularly powerful in this deck, but interesting. I would be wondering why he's playing Sabine, the new Sabine in this deck. The rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. One of the qualities of Han Red is like you get access to 9 3/5 for 3, which gives you a lot of consistency, and 3/5 for 3 are just very, very well positioned in the meta, especially when you can play them on turn 1. The rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect from a Han Red. And it's called sort of like once again, a tempo. It's the same, it's a tempo deck just on Han Yellow, just using different cards and trading different things. Then we got a Quinlan Tarkintown, which is a deck that definitely has been performing, and this list is very much what you would expect. Once again, now there's 2 of them still not being played. I'm not a big fan of Grogu personally, especially in a list that doesn't run now there's 2 of them. One of the main advantages of Grogu is that gives you like a 2-drop that is difficult to kill, and you can play now there's 2 of them, and then you can play a Plo Koon on turn 2. But in this case, yeah, I would say Dia only has the Plo Koon. He's not even playing the Anakin, so yeah, that makes sense that he wouldn't. Yeah, it's just probably to enable the early fall throw is what I would say. Then we got Bossk Green. So Bossk Green is a very interesting deck in this meta, as it's, in my opinion, one of the strongest deck against Han Yellow. If you wanted to find a deck that can do quite well against Han Yellow, I think Han Green is a very good example of this. And the reason why I think Han Green is so good against Han Yellow is because, Bossk Green is good against Han Yellow is because it's very difficult for Han Yellow in the early stages of the game to not be playing a unit. And the deck has to kind of play aggressive, and then you're basically putting some bounties on the thing. And it's very difficult to, basically the only way to not get bounties is that you have to waylay your own unit, which is very, very harmful to do that to your own units. Like if you start waylaying your own stuff just to get rid of the bounties, that's so much momentum that you're losing. So it's relatively easy for Bossk to get those bounties out. And then obviously once you reach the late game, the Bossk is just going to have a much better late game. So Bossk has a tendency to be quite bad against aggro because it has no way to heal. So against Sabine, the deck is very fragile in my opinion. However, against anything that is a bit more mid-rangey, like a Quinlan or a Han, I think Bossk is very well positioned. Bossk Green specifically is very well positioned. This list though is very odd. There's a couple of things that I don't really understand. First of all, I found Force-Choke to be so incredibly well positioned in the current meta. It's very good against Sabine, it's very good against Han, so it's really good to get. Yes, you make your opponent draw a card, but once you manage to double trigger your bounties and you have so much value on the board, you don't really care that your opponent draw a card, really. So I'm not sure why he's not playing like the full package. So only 2 copies of Resupply is also kind of weird because Resupply is so good. With this deck, his ability to just ramp one variety of different late game threat. There's also 1 copy of the pirated battle tank, which I don't like at all in this meta, when there's not everybody, but like the most popular deck, the double cunning deck, can play cunning and can bounce the pirate battle tank. That's pretty massive. He's playing the clients in the sideboard as a way to heal against aggro. It's very strong because you can get it out bounty onto Quarry or from the Vader. without paying the aspect penalty. And even if you do pay the aspect penalty, it's not the end of the world, and that can give you a lot of very powerful heal, especially when you can double trigger the bounty with Bossk. So yeah, the rest of the deck is what you would expect here from the Bossk Green, with a wide variety of different threats. And you can see here that this deck has basically been built to mostly with aggro in mind, not really caring too much about control. As you can see, he's not even playing a single copies of Palpatine's Return in his sideboard, so not really caring about hard control at all, because this deck would be very vulnerable to hard control, I would say. Moving on, we got another Han Yellow here. This list is very classic, what you would expect, but very anti-aggro here. As you can see, the 3 Garden Guard in the main deck, the 2 Liberator Gunship, only 2 copies of Han Solo. Like, I find this very, very weird to be playing only 2 copies of Han Solo in this specific meta, simply because Han Solo is one of the most powerful card you could possibly play in a mirror match. Like, this card is insane in mirror. For me, like, the mirror almost comes down to whoever draws the most Han, and not only playing 2 copies of Han seems to be suicidal in a meta that is full of Han Yellow, but that's kind of like my opinion. I don't really know. So then you have a couple of Fennec Shan. Yeah, he's even playing Fennec Shan over a 3rd copy of Han, and that's really weird. Yeah, pretty classic. There's a couple of deck building decisions I don't really understand, but moving on here to Quinlan Tarkintown. There you go. That's another Quinlan, yeah, in the same top 8. I think this is the first time that Quinlan, there's 2 Quinlan Red in the same top 8 in a European tournament. Quinlan has typically been less popular in Europe than it's been in the US. Yeah, so a lot lower to the ground here, a lot more aggressive. Nothing that costs more than 5. And only 2 copies of Plo Koon, which Plo Koon has been an absolute mainstay of the Quinlan deck. Obviously, so like one of the big reasons why people love Quinlan is because it does so well in combination with Plo Koon. So very, very interesting to see only 2 copies. This version is just so much more aggressive. As you can see here, plays the Wing Leaders package, and he plays a lot of 1-drop here with the Cartelton Code and Soldiers of the 501st, and even 3 copies of Leia Organa. So this has to be one of the most aggressive version of Quinlan I've ever seen. Even playing the 4 cards, I believe it almost feels like it feels like a Sabine Yellow deck that has decided to play Quinlan instead of Sabine, which is very interesting. I wonder. I mean, Quinlan Tarkintown gives you a huge advantage in the early stage of the game on board dominance, and maybe this player valued this synergy way more than it valued the ability to deploy earlier into deal ping damage to the base. And talking about Sabine Yellow, we just got a Sabine Yellow right after here in this tournament, so let's take a look at it. Yeah, this is pretty much what you would expect. We see the Valiant Assault Ship here making an appearance, even though, yeah, it's quite good against Han, because Han does like to cheat resources into play, so that does make sense. The Valiant Assault Ship kind of makes sense. And we'll see once again the Ahsoka Padawan lightsaber being played over the DR-44 blaster. So if you're wondering why would anybody play the Ahsoka Padawan lightsaber over a DR-44 blaster, and the answer is because the Ahsoka Padawan lightsaber does not disturb 4 cars I believe in. You can play 4 cars I believe in, and because this card is heroism, it will not be a detriment to your 4 cars I believe in. And the problem is, like, you're already playing 3 surprise strike and 1 sneak attack, so you're already playing 4 non-heroism card in your deck, and you don't want to go lower than that. So that's why people play Ahsoka Padawan lightsaber over the DR-44 blaster. Even though DR-44 blaster is definitely the better card normally. Okay. Then last but not least, we got an Anakin Blue, which is your classic blue heroism red mid-range deck. Ooh, sorry, my tone is a bit slow. And yeah, it's very much what you would expect. Only 1 copy of Obi-Wan. We see Obi-Wan becoming less and less popular. The problem of Obi-Wan, it's really, really bad against Han. So we're seeing people playing less and less Obi-Wan in the full package of Regional Governor, Regional Governor is quite nice in Anakin simply because normally Regional Governor is kind of a dead body. You just play it for the ability pretty much. But in this case, thanks to Anakin, you can actually give him the +2 bonus attack and you can actually kill 3 health units and he will actually survive most of the time, which is actually pretty nice. Very aggro top 8 here. I mean, a couple of mid-range, very aggro and mid-range, no control deck whatsoever. Which is surprising from Spain, because Spain, they like their control decks. And here we got the PQ Essen, 68 player, a little bit smaller. In this case, we got once again Quinlan making definitely rising popularity in Europe with 3 red Quinlan Red in this top 8. And we're gonna see here the Bossk Green in number 1. So Bossk Green, as I said earlier, is a deck that I think has good weapons against Han. And here the list is actually very similar from the other list we saw, with a very wide split. Only 1 copy of Force Choke. This time he's playing a second copy in the sideboard. And once again we have this random parroted battle tank here. It's probably very good against Sabine, I would say. Like 4/6 for 6. Can be quite good. This time he's playing a client in the main deck. I like it because it gives you a bit of toolbox option for your Vader or for your Bounty Hunter Quarry. So definitely like a random 1 copy is nice. He's playing the full package of resupply, as I think he should be. But yeah, pretty much the list is similar. And we're seeing the Scanning Officer in the sideboard. So Scanning Officer, in my opinion, is one of the best counter to Han Yellow, and I'm relatively surprised to not even see it in the main deck. For example, I don't think that the Colin Yularen is specifically, like, maybe it's really much better against Sabine, but you can see the meta is not completely hating on Han. Like, people are not, like, doesn't look to me like a list that is been built to beat Han, because you could do so much better against Han. Just try to play some Scanning Officer in the main deck. You're going to see your win rate against Han increasing significantly, because this is such a hard card to play around if you're playing Han. As soon as your opponent has the initiative, you always have this constant danger that your opponent might just drop a Scanning Officer and blank your entire turn. So I find it surprising that players in general, green players in general, have not been trying a little bit more aggressively to hate against Han Yellow, which is such a presence in the meta. And it's not like the card is bad against Sabine or against Quinlan, because those also do play a certain amount of Then we got, once again, the same player, I forgot his name, but the same player who actually did win a PQ with his Mace Windu Blue. This time he's going to the final with the same list. So this is great, and a great performance for him to do almost a PQ back-to-back. I mean, and the list, as you can expect, is pretty much the same. I haven't compared the 2 lists, but I'm pretty sure they're the same. Very close to it. Yeah, I can recognize the sideboard here. So if you want to try to play Mace Windu competitively, definitely check this list out. My experience with Mace Windu is that he's pretty strong. I love his leader ability. I think his leader ability is very strong. However, I still think his leader deployment is very lackluster. And it's a very big problem for a leader that deploys on 7. So me personally, I'm not a big fan. From a purely competitive standpoint, obviously I love the playstyle, but from a purely competitive standpoint, I find the leader to be a little bit lackluster. But something you have to understand about Star Wars Unlimited is that Star Wars Unlimited is way more about the players than it is about the deck. If you're a good player, you can win. I wouldn't say with any deck, of course, but you can win with decks that might not be considered the best, because you can more than make up for that with the quality. And I would always advise you to choose a deck that is powerful, that you know inside out, rather than picking the most meta decks that you're not comfortable with. So if you love a deck and you, even if this might not be from a purely competitive standpoint the best, you're still gonna have much better chance to win with the deck that you know well. And here we're seeing a Quinlan list with a different set of cards. So there's a couple of interesting things. There's 2 copies of Leia. Leia is making a comeback here. Leia Organa is making a comeback, a card that was kind of forgotten. And it's still a good card. It's flexible. Can come into play, ready a resource. Something you can do with Leia, for example, with Quinlan, which is quite nice, is that when your opponent opens up with a 2-drop, let's say you want to go double turn 1 opening, while you more than likely you won't be able to damage anything with Quinlan because more than likely your opponent will open up with a 2-drop. But with Leia Organa, you can actually go with double 1-drop opening and still be able to ping the opponent 2-drops and ping plus Tarkintown. So imagine a turn where you would go, my opponent opens 2-drop, you go Leia Organa, untap one of your resources, use Quinlan, damage the opponent 2-drop, use Tarkintown, get rid of that 2-drops, and then you can play R2D2, or you can even play you can play R2D2, or you can play like a DR44 blaster or something. Or maybe you don't even use the Tarkintown, maybe you just damage the unit with Leia, untap a resource, then play the Daring Raid. So there's a couple of really cool shenanigans you can do with Leia, not only of course Leia just playing it alright just to tap down something. So I feel like this is quite smart. To be playing Leia in Quinlan, and we'll see if this kind of little tech here to kind of stay there for the foreseeable future. The rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. There's a second Quinlan here. And this one is very much classics, very much what you would expect. The Jean Erso this time is being played with a full surrender, and also black one. Wow, I think this is the first. It's been a long time since I've seen a black one making a top 8. Definitely a very situational card, but if in the right situation, if you have a very empty-handed, you play this as the last card of your hand, get to play a 4/4 and draw 3 cards. Pretty good. But I wonder how often he used it. I would be very curious to know. Because from my experience, this card very often just stays in your hand. It's just very awkward, very difficult to use, very difficult to play. So I wonder how often he actually made it work. And this list of Quinlan Red is very, very similar to what you would expect. In the sideboard, though, we are seeing this is a 2/2 and when it comes to play, if there's another yellow unit in play, you get to shield it. I wonder in which matchup he wants this. Maybe in the Jango matchup. This seems to be quite good, assuming you can get a yellow unit on the ground. But really the problem with this card is the curve. Obviously, you would open up with a yellow unit on turn 1, and then on turn 2, you have to play this below curve, which is a bit awkward. Obviously, you can pair this with a Daring Raid or another one drop, so it's not completely terrible, but it can be quite awkward in the curve. But you really need to be having another 1-drop, otherwise you're kind of wasting a resource. And now we got a Sabine ECL. I haven't seen a lot of Sabine ECL in this top 8 so far, so it'll be interesting to see them. Oh my god, okay, my internet is kind of going slow. I'll open multiple window. Okay, Sabine ECL here. Pretty much what you would expect. Full package of Dark Sabers. The Scanning Officers in the sideboard, interesting. And then the General Blade. Combining General Blades and the Dark Saber here in Sabine is very, very interesting. Very greedy. But maybe that took some people by surprise. And we're seeing Jean making an appearance here over the traditional Alliance X-Wing. And I was saying this, so this is the last, this is the Anakin Blue deck. I'm sorry if I cannot mention the name of the different players. I don't have the names. Okay, this is a very classic Anakin Blue with the regional governor in the main deck. And we're seeing the Raider Crest in the sideboard. I mean, you're not playing any, you're only playing 2 pillars positions, so hard to get back on upgrade. I mean, it's still a solid card, to be fair. And also 2 copies of Obi-Wan Interspite, probably to deal with Jango. So a lot of sideboard card against Jango here, as you can see. And then finally, a Cad Bane Green. So this version of Cad Bane features, so basically the inconvenience of running green over red is obviously the fact that you don't get Tarkintown, which is such a better base than ECL, in my opinion, in the context of Cad Bane. But to be quite fair, Cad Bane does not really benefit a lot from red. Basically, the only real card you're getting from red is typically going to be Ruthless Raider. That's basically it. And even Ruthless Raider, as good as it is, it's not amazing in this deck. It's not like you're playing a triple dark rate deck anyways. However, so what you get in green is you get a lot more stuff from green. Here we're getting resupply, and Super Laser Technician, and 3 copies of Maul. That's a lot of cards, and Maul is so good in an Underworld heavy deck because you can almost always direct the damage. So this deck is very interesting, very, very ambush based here. We're seeing a full package of Bossk, 4 LOM, Maul. Therefore, the deck is probably relatively fragile to even the Cloud Riders. So almost no defenses there against space. So kind of a weird deck on that sense. And what is shocking to me is to not see 3 copies of Overwhelming Barrage in the main deck. He's playing only 1 copy, and that's in the sideboard. That to me is shocking. I don't know how in the world would you ever... This is such a weird list. Once again, it's a 68 player tournament, so you can't put too much weight on those results, but this is shocking that you would play, especially the weakness. If this guy ever comes across this video, maybe I'll be able to explain me, but the deck is so vulnerable to space. I find this shocking that he would not try to play the barrage, which is literally fixing your problem, because if you manage to land a big fella on the ground, you can play barrage and you can kind of rebalance things out. He also has Cad Bane, which is great against space, but then I would want to play 3 copies of Cad Bane here, to... now there's 2 copies of Now There's 2 of them, which seems to be the sweet spot. People seems to be going away from playing 3 copies of Now There's 2 of them and kind of going back into the 2 copies. And I think that's more reasonable because Now There's 2 of them definitely is a situational card. So hard to be justifying the full package. And that was it for the PQ Essen. Then we got the PQ London with 102 players. And first position is a Bossk Green. Okay, so this is a bit more what I would expect from the Bossk Green. 3 copies of Force Choke, really good against in the current meta. I think Force Choke is very well positioned in the current meta. And then a lot of redundancy. This case, I didn't know we would see the day where Cell Block Guard would be played on top of S3 Dark Trooper. That is... I was not expecting people that I would ever see ever again a Cell Block Guard being played in a black-green deck, but looks like here we are. And this brings me back a lot of memories from the earlier versions of the game. And here the Daring Raid. Daring Raid combined with Bossk ability allows us to get rid of units so you can basically go turn 1. You can go Bounty onto Quarry, ping with Bossk, and then finishing off with Daring Raid. And kill something that has 3 health on turn 1 and trigger the Bounty onto Quarry on turn 1. Which can really snowball into a big advantage. No clients, even in the sideboard, that's surprising to me. But I can understand that client can be a little bit inconsistent since you have to play it out of aspect. And this time, really respecting a lot more control with the 3 copies of Palpatine's Returns in sideboard. But no Relentless in this version of the deck, so... Interesting deck, and is done obviously very well. Congratulations. This time we have the name Moto Talaric. Okay, that's cool. In second position, we have my good friend Voltor, also known as Beton, from the Swoop Racers, who is part of my playtesting group. And he's playing his signature Han Red. If you want to know more about this deck, he's made a very in-depth video. And one of the Swoop Racers are releasing a constructed video about it's usually about a deck that they think is very powerful. And they usually proceed in playing this deck in tournament and almost always provide results to back up their. So his deck, as you can see, this is kind of like the aggro mid-range version. Who's playing loads of boosters or 2 copies of Breaking In and Surprise Strike. So there's no doubt that this deck is indeed an aggressive deck with a lot of redundancy on the 3/5s, making the deck fairly consistent. The possibility to interact with the opponent's hand with the Kira and the Spark of Rebellion. So basically trying to play the Han Yellow game plan, but being a little bit more aggressive. Obviously, you are giving up on a lot of things. You're giving up on the Continental Bouncer, on the Cunning, on the options of deploying DJ on 7. But you're also getting a lot of strong cards, Pod Amron, K2SO, Cassian, Sabine, which is also very, very strong. And also a couple of other cards like Mace, Windu. Then we got the Jango Red of Bobby Sapphire. So looks like the K2OD crew is still on the Jango Red train, and the deck has not, their version of the deck has not changed a lot since the last version I've seen, playing the No Good to Me Dead. I think No Good to Me Dead, we're seeing a lot more players giving up on No Good to Me Dead in Jango, and I think that's a mistake. I believe No Good to Me Dead won the best card against Han Yellow in my opinion. So it would seem crazy to give up such a card in the matchup, even though you have all the options to tap down some things. But having the option to tap down something for 2 turns in a row is pretty massive in my opinion. The rest of the deck is pretty much what they were playing very early, like much earlier in the set. And I think Bobby Sapphire went day 1 undefeated in this PQ, so congratulations to him. And obviously, if you didn't know, they had a YouTube channel, their K2OD YouTube channel. If you want to check it out, they do competitive Star Wars Limited content. And then we go, the rest of them, we don't have all the deck lists. We got Quinlan ECL, Jango, 3 more Jango Tarkintown. So 4 Jango Tarkintown in total in this top 8. That is crazy. And another Han Yellow here. This one is very much what you would expect. We'll sing some Rogue Operative here. Not a big fan of Rogue Operative in this specific meta, as it obviously dies to Ping plus Tarkintown, which is almost everywhere in this meta. But I would say he's playing the Wing Leader as well, so he's playing. This is because he wants to have more redundancy on the Rebels. So okay, interesting. It's definitely a different approach. And then finally we got another Jango Tarkintown. So Jango Tarkintown not doing too hot in the rest of the tournament, but completely breaking open this tournament here. For Jango by Thrawn ZB, I think that's the name of the guy. And this one is playing On the Doorstep. So I believe that if you're playing, I love On the Doorstep. This might be one of my favorite lists of Jango Red. The only thing I'm not 100% convinced about is this 2 copies of Criminal Muscle. I mean, there's a lot of upgrades in the meta. There's a lot of DR44 blasters, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. Yeah, I would be interesting to know exactly in which matchups you would want this. I mean, it's obviously very good against Darksabers, but outside of that, there's nothing that comes to my mind as a particularly powerful things to bounce. So I don't know. Would be curious to see to know why he's running Criminal Muscle in this deck. If you are the owner of this list, just let me know. Then 2 copies. I love On Your Doorstep in Jango Red. I think it really fills the curve very well, and you're getting a bunch of tokens that can be exploited by the Pursuer, the tank, and a lot of very annoying tokens that can just attack and tap down the enemy units using Jango Fett. That's really cool. And that's it for the PQ London. Then we got a PQ Paris, which without really much of a surprise, because Han Yellow is very, very popular in France. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Han Yellow in top 8 here. And the first player who got the Han Yellow is once again Yukunu Jr. Probably one of the most famous Han Yellow pilots in Star Wars Unlimited, and a very good player. who already it is his second PQ that he wins, so congratulations to him. Unfortunately, he's not wanting to give up his list because he's basically been working with someone else on that list and he's not willing to, and that other person is going to have other PQs, so he doesn't want to reveal his list quite yet. I think there's videos though about the final, so you probably can figure out his list just by watching the video, to be fair. Then second position we have in the Anakin Yellow. So with the list here, with I think the main, so he's playing 3 Jada's lightsaber. That is not usual at all. Probably not very good against Han Solo with how many bounds the deck is running. The rest of the deck seems to be pretty much what you would expect. Once again, the regional governors are really trying to be a mainstay in this deck. Then we got a Palpatine Yellow. I'm not going to go through all the lists because those are very tedious to look at. I'm just going to take a look at the Bossk Green. Reinforcement Walker, create open fire resupply, open barrage. Once again, only 2 resupply. I mean, you have to cut some one client. Okay. Yeah, the problem is like you can't really play like so many ramp because you're already playing press on your head. So if you're playing resupply on top of it, but if there's the one that I would keep, I would definitely keep resupply over Super Laser Technician because at least resupply cannot be interacted with. That's my thoughts. Again, we got a PQ Bordeaux that was 69 players, so a much smaller PQ, and it's a much smaller city. And here there's a two interesting lists. So take a look at the Jango Tarkintown. Okay, once again, only 1 copy of No Good to Be Dead. I'm not a big fan of that. Okay, this is very similar. Okay, so the video, the title of the video says "Thanks Poland." So it's pretty much the list of the swoop racers. It's the list of SIP and Beton that he borrowed. I love this list. The only thing I don't like about this list is that they are only playing 1 copy of No Good to Be Dead. I think No Good to Be Dead is so incredibly good in the current meta. And I'm not a big fan of patrol fighters. So I mean, you're swapping the patrol fighters and you're putting this as 3 No Good to Be Dead. This is what I would run. But obviously a very strong list. Then we got a Bossk Green, a Kira Green finally. Finally some soft control here. Here Bossk Blue also making an appearance. Bossk Green. Bossk Green has been far more popular this is one of the big takeaways we can take from this 3rd week of PQ is that Bossk Green is definitely making a better impression. And then we got Thrawn Green. This Thrawn Green is going to be very interesting. Definitely a very out of the box deck. So okay, so this is kind of like, this reminds me a little bit of, so he's playing the 3 copies of, now there's 2 of them. So it is an Underworld Thrawn deck. That is very interesting. So very rampy here, got a 3 resupply, 3 Super Technician, 2 copies of Thrafting Gunship. This deck is absolutely wild. Wow, okay, I don't understand why he's playing Thrawn, to be fair. Like, Thrawn doesn't seem to have... I mean, I guess he has a lot of very expensive units, so using Thrawn can be quite effective there. Wow, I have no idea what to say about this guys. Already, once again, only 2 copies of Over Barrage is a criminal in my opinion. You should be playing 3. Yeah, not exactly sure. Like, he's playing triple Dark Raid, but he's not even playing the full package of Reinforcement Walker. Wow, this is by far the weirdest list I've seen. 2 copies of Restock, I don't even know where you would want that. Ugh, okay, well, no, sorry. I was a bit excited about it, and then I saw the list and I was like, ugh, never mind. Anyway, Sabine ECL, pretty classic version, except for the Yularen here, which are making an appearance in this deck. Something we've seen before. And now we're moving on to USA. Yeah, we're done with Europe, we're going to USA. A lot fewer lists, unfortunately. This one, a 45-player tournament, a very, very small one. 1 Han Yellow, 1 Han Blue, Cad Red, Bossk Blue, Sabine ECL, Palpatine Yellow, and a Bossk Green. Bossk Green, once again, performing pretty well. PQ Houston, 58 players are fairly small as well. 2 Sabine Green, a Han 2 Blue managed to sneak into the crack of a very, very hostile meta, but still a very strong deck in my opinion, even though it's not doing so well in this meta, because obviously the fact that you have to damage your own unit in order to play them, they get hard countered by Tarkintown is so incredibly bad in this current meta where Tarkintown is pretty much everywhere. And then we get Jango Tarkintown, Han Yellow, and then Quinlan, and then Anakin Blue. Okay. PQ Dallas, that's the big one. 113 players. We're going to take a look at the list. So we got the Anakin Blue with a couple of spicy stuff in there. There's the Sky Go Embo is a 3/4 for 3. If the defender was defeated, heal up 2 damage from a unit. Wow. Yeah, I don't think this is particularly good, but it's been working for him. Yeah, the rest of the list is pretty much what you would expect. Even a copies of Evidence of Crime in the sideboard. That's definitely something that you can take people by surprise with this, even though it is fairly situational. So congratulations to this Anakin Blue, and then the Bossk Blue for the final. Take a look at the list. 2 Grey Dragon, 2 Palpatine, 3 Avenger, Rival's Fall, Bounty Hunter Crew, 1 Bounty Hunter Crew, and I think the main originality of this list is the 3 copies of Ruthless Raiders in the main deck. I actually like Ruthless Raider in Bossk. I just wouldn't put it in the main deck because I think there's going to be too many matchups in which it's not going to be great. I think it's quite good against anything that has a lot of units that have 2 health or less, with a lot of small units that you can snipe off, and it's really good against control. But against anything that does not fall into those 2 categories, then the Ruthless Raider is going to be pretty bad. And then we got Han Solo Red once again. Han Solo Red with the Gary attack pod here. This is okay. This seems to be very close to the list of the Super Racers. Yeah, that seems to be very close to a Super Racer list. Another Cad Bane Green. This one's using the 30 HP base. So Cad Bane Green making an appearance here. And a Strafing Gunship again. Wow. I'm really wonder why this Strafing Gunship is about. This card is so slow. Like, I found this card to be so slow. You're playing a 4-drop that doesn't have any immediate impact on the game, and it's only useful if your opponent has small units on the board. I find it to be, it's both slow and very situational. I don't like that card at all. So I really wonder why this is making. If you guys I've played one of those Cad Bane Green deck and have an answer to this, I'll be very eager to know the answer on why this card any good. And then we got a Kylo Tarkintown. So Kylo Tarkintown, I want to talk about this. This deck is very interesting. I mean, it's very, very aggressive. I actually did play my fair share of Kylo decks, and actually showed like a Kylo Yellow list on my channel, which was a budget list, but there was a non-budget version that was also shown, and I typically like the yellow version better. Because I think that yellow gives more than double red. I mean, double red gives you access to aggression, Chaos of War, Mr. Bones, and Bo-Katan. So, Mr. Bones, you can play Greedo instead. Mr. Bones may be slightly better than Greedo, but not by a lot. The Chaos of War, you can play it out of aspect, and that doesn't really make that big of a difference. Aggression is actually not that amazing in this deck. It's good, but it's not like, this deck is so aggressive, and aggression is typically more of a kind of a controlling mid-range card. So it doesn't really fit the archetype super well, even though it is just a straight up strong card. So really the biggest addition is the Bo-Katan. And yellow gives you access to so much more, like Surprise Strike, Surprise Strike. I don't have them on top of my head, but there's just so much. Yellow gives you access to so much more. It gives you access to DR44 blasters. It gives you access to a bunch of super important cards. So I tend to prefer Kylo Yellow, but Kylo Tarkintown definitely a very strong deck. And talking about Kylo Yellow, there's actually a Kylo Red there. Another thing that Kylo Yellow gives you is Petronaki Arena. And I actually prefer Petronaki Arena over Tarkintown. No, I think Tarkintown is actually better than Petronaki Arena. So that's maybe the main argument in favor of Kylo Red instead of Kylo Yellow. But Petronaki Arena is not terrible in this deck. You get a +1 attack bonus on the Kylo Ren. But look at the amount of yellow cards that are so good in this deck. So you get Lurking TIE Phantoms, 7th Fleet Defender, Geonosis Battle Fighters, Surprise Strike. This version plays the triple Dark Raid as well. And then you get the Snapshot Reflexes, the Waylay. Okay, this version is definitely a bit more tempo-y, a bit closer to what you would see from like... Think about like an aggressive version, a super aggro version of Jango Red, basically. That's very interesting. And then the Palpatine Green managed to find its way in the sea of aggro decks. You're going to see that Palpatine is definitely has fallen in popularity. I mean, to be honest, Palpatine has never done so well in set 3. And the reason in set 3, outside of... So you saw 2 Palpatine deck in the top 8 of Birmingham. So people kind of lost their mind on this. But to be frank, the meta is so aggro, it's very, very bad for Palpatine. So this version of the deck plays ECL. I think the first time I see it's not shown here on this, but actually this is an ECL version of Palpatine. And it's obviously, I mean, if you're going to auto lose against aggro, might as well just go all the way and play ECL instead of 30 HP base. I don't see anything that is particularly good with ECL though. I mean, it's okay with Entropy's Lackey, I guess. Okay, maybe it's okay with Magma Guard, Wing Leader. You kill something, you stay alive, that kind of thing, but... Okay, so that was the PQ. So we got a Quinlan Tarkintown as well. That's pretty classic. Move on to PQ San Luis. We got 73 players. And this meta is very different. We got ourselves no Han Yellow. There's no Han Yellow in PQ Dallas whatsoever. Just one Han Red. And then in PQ San Luis, no Han Yellow either. We got 2 Cad Red. We got a Asajj Tarkintown, which is cool to see, even though we won't be able to see the list. Another Bossk Blue making in the final. So Bossk Blue, it's funny because usually Bossk Blue does better in the EU, and Quinlan does better in the US. And here, just this week, it's actually the other way around. Bossk Blue doing much better in the US, and Quinlan Red doing much better in the EU. So it's very interesting. So Jango Tarkintown and Quinlan Red. Okay. And here we got the PQ Baltimore, 116 players, so a pretty big one. And once again, Han Green taking the win. Kira Green, double Han Yellow, Quinlan ECL, Jango Tarkintown, Sabine ECL, and another Bossk Blue in top 8. So, yeah, Quinlan ECL, also an interesting deck. It's terrible against control, but it's pretty good against everything else. I think it has been the most successful yellow, white, green decks alongside Han. And here we got a PQ Portland with a Han 1 Yellow and then 1, 2, 3 Jango Reds, a Jango Blue, Cad Red Tarkintown, the Jango Blue probably a control version of Jango, and another Han Yellow at the bottom and a Bossk Green. Unfortunately, we don't have any list. Probably they've been showing some list into the stream from the Take the Initiative stream. PQ San Diego with Han Tarkintown taking the win, so another Han Red, Quinnic ECL, Quinlan Tarkintown. Really, the combination of this expansion is yellow, white, red is so popular. This expansion, it's crazy. Yellow, white, red, and even yellow, black, red is very popular. So whether it's villainy or heroism, red, yellow is just definitely the most popular combination of the set by far. Palpatine Yellow, Cad Bane Red, Han Yellow, Quinlan Tarkintown ECL. Okay. And then PQ Minneapolis. Got a Han 1 Yellow taking the win. ECL, Sabine ECL, Palpatine Yellow. Palpatine Yellow doing quite well in the US, and we see one Palpatine per set. This is probably the list of Yosera or something close to that. Sabine ECL, Quinlan Tarkintown, a Han security complex. Very interesting. You don't see that very often, but Security Complex is actually very powerful against Tarkintown. So that can be an interesting thing, but having 5 HP on your base is definitely a big deal, so you gotta be careful of this. And in this top 8, we got not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 Sabine ECL. If you guys thought Sabine ECL was not doing so well, wait again, wait again. And here we got the PQ Edmonton in Canada, very small PQ, 37 players only, that's not a lot. Quinlan Blue, 1 ECL, a Tarkin Yellow, showing his face, Han Green, Han Yellow, Bossk ECL this time, Sabine ECL, and we see Anakin ECL in top 8. And then we got a couple of tournaments that we don't have, unfortunately. We don't have the top 8, unfortunately. There's a stream, but... So you would be able to figure out the top 8 from that, so a little bit surprised that the owner of the website did not update that. And then we got a very small PQ, 2 very small PQ in Italy. So I don't know what happened in Italy, but a 26-player PQ and a 14-player PQ, that is not normal. So we can talk a little bit about that. In my opinion, that's not acceptable. The idea that someone got a buy for Worlds by competing in 14 players tournament, that is not normal. That is basically smaller than my local showdown. And I don't even live in a country where Star Wars Limited is particularly popular. I live in Ireland. And even in Ireland, we can have store showdowns that are bigger than a PQ like this. Basically, that means every person who attended this tournament got themselves a promo Tranquility just for taking part. So that's definitely not normal. And I'm expecting that. So maybe there's a story behind it, the reason why this tournament had such low attendance. But I would be interested to know why that's the case. Obviously, this is only season 0. It's kind of supposed to be a test run for FFG. So they're probably running a bunch of PQs, seeing what succeeds and see what does not succeed. And then next season, they're probably going to be a bit more cautious on how they're handing out those PQs, because this is not normal to have a PQ with only 14 players attendance. So it's saying a 26-player tournament is very, very small. Yeah, very, very, very small. I think, in my opinion, a PQ that has less than 60 people, that is not accept. We're going below the acceptable threshold, in my opinion. Okay. So yeah, results here: Quinlan Tarkintown, Cad Bane, whatever. They're so small tournaments. You can't really learn not much from that. Jango Yellow, and then we got PQ Cleveland, the same 49 players, really not a lot. And then we got a PQ Sao Paulo. So some PQ Sao Paulo, 66 players. It's not that much, because think about Sao Paulo is 15 million. It's a massive city. It's like 15 million inhabitants. It's out of the list of those different cities we saw, it's by far the biggest one, not even close. So only 666 player. It's not that much. The top 8 is very meta. Han Yellow, Tarkintown, Cad Bane Blue. As a control, Cad Bane, we've seen this being quite popular. Rey Tarkintown, Jango Tarkintown, Sabine ECL, Palpatine Green, and a Bossk Blue. Take a look at the list here. We'll see if we can find anything interesting. And they're taking ages to load for some reason. Maybe SWDB is a bit... So waiting for those lists to load, we're just going to take a look at the meta of set 3 PQ. So with the updated numbers, I've actually compared the numbers that we had this week compared to the numbers we had last week. And the only notable differences is that we're seeing the Bossk Green rising in popularity. Also, basically, Bossk Green winning 4 PQs in such a small amount is a pretty big deal. Okay, the page is not working, so unfortunately we won't be able to see the list. I'll give it another try later on, but yeah. And everything else is pretty much where it was last week with like a 1%. We're seeing definitely a fall into Palpatine popularity. We're seeing Kira not really throwing to the ground, not really doing so well. And yeah, a rise definitely in popularity of Han Red. which was not so popular, but this time we got three top 8. Also a rise in popularity in Kylo Red as the most aggressive archetypes in the entire game. Definitely, Chancellor Palpatine has definitely fallen in popularity. I was really expecting... Chancellor Palpatine did quite decently early on and then kind of fell off. He's the only one Chancellor Palpatine Blue to a top 16 result. That is definitely not a lot. Let's see if we can take a look at those lists. I would really like to see how the Brazilian play the game, if possible. Ah, good. It's working. Perfect. So we're going to take a look at the Han Yellow. Pretty classic list. Not much to say. So again, it's a Gamer 1 guard in the sideboard. And once again, only 2 copies of Han Solo, but at least this time he's playing the 3rd copy in the sideboard, which makes sense. So, apparently it's a budget list. Yeah, to be fair, there's nothing wrong with playing budget Jango. Really the only thing budget is you replacing the mercenary gunship by the Kylo silencer. So really, you're not really making the deck a lot worse. So this is very close to the list I've showed on my channel, the budget version of Jango Red. So if you don't want to spend a lot of money in this game, play this deck. It's one of the best budget decks you could ever play, at least in this meta. And here we got a Rey deck, very classic. And here we got, once again, a Jango Red. Love this list. Yeah, it's very it is very much the list of the Super Racers. Sabine ECL. There's actually a nice little report on each of the deck lists if you want to check them out. Classic version, accepted maybe with a Dodonna, which is very good in the mirror match. Force often your opponent to use ECL on it. So anything that can force your opponent to ECL early can be quite good. And a Palpatine Green. Ooh, this seems to be a lot of cards. Is it more than 60 cards? 50 cards? I gotta pay attention to yeah, this is very much what you would expect from Palpatine Green. Oh no, 52 cards. Okay, it's not so much. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Architects. Yeah, it's basically always playing 1 copy of Endless Legion sideboard. Definitely is cool tech here for the mirror match. Once again, the scanning officer in the sideboard. And here we get the Bossk Blue. And take a look at this list. And as you can see, this is very much what you would expect. Yeah, it's very much just textbook Bossk Blue. I would say make an opening in 1 extra, make an opening in the main deck, and then he plays the Bounty Hunter Queen in May. Yeah, it's very close to my list actually. It's very close to my updated version of the deck. Very, very close. So yeah, so congratulations. Great to see South America joining the party. So before we leave, there's just a few comments I wanted to make. So as you can see, we see of course Han Yellow for the 2nd week in a row maintaining it's lost a little bit of percentage, but it's pretty much on the same realm as it was last week, around 20%, around 18%. So some people are kind of saying, yeah, Han Yellow for the 2nd week in a row here doing very well. I don't think this is an indication at all that the deck is overpowered. I think that below 20% is definitely still a very acceptable percentage to be in. I think I would trust this percentage more than this one. This one is kind of like, it's very swingy because you have to win the tournament. While in top 8 is a bit more kind of like, there's a bit more of a critical mass of data that makes the data a bit more reliable. I think that Han Yellow is definitely the top dog of the meta. There's no question about this. And I think that people are learning to play the deck more and more, which makes the deck very powerful. Han Yellow is one of the deck. It's something I said very early on, and that's the reason why I've worked on Han a lot early on Star Wars Limited, because I really thought that it's a deck that is very powerful already, and I was like, it is such a hard deck to play. It can only get better as people get better at it. And this is why I really took a lot of time to play the deck, also because it's very fun. And now I play the deck very well, and it suits me very well. For example, I won the Store Showdown this weekend with Han Yellow. It's really a deck that rewards skill immensely. So it's a very, very powerful deck. With all that being said, I don't think people have really adapted to beat the deck so much. When you look at people's list, you don't see people hating on Han as much as they should, I think. I think that people are not respecting, either they don't know how to beat it, or they don't respect the matchup enough to really put enough cards in their deck to really beat it. We're seeing the Jango Red players playing less and less No Good To Me Dead, which I think is a huge mistake. We're seeing the scanning officers are making it to the sideboard, but not quite making it to the main deck, which I think they should in some cases. So there's a couple of things that I think people can still do to kind of hate on Han a little bit more, and maybe when they do, the win percentage of Han will go down a little bit more. Is kind of what I'm thinking. So we'll see how it goes for the next week. We definitely need more data to see how things check out. But definitely a very diverse meta overall. Not having a single deck above the 8% line is very encouraging. And overall the meta is pretty aggro, but it's I would say it's not brainless aggro. It's not like just aggro, go face. It's very, those kind of aggro decks are very interactive, and that makes the meta quite interesting in my opinion. So I think the meta is very good, and I think it's a very good time to get into Star Wars Limited. So yeah, thank you so much for following that video, and if I missed anything, please let me know in the comments below. And I'll see you next time for another report.